Who slept more than 10 hours? 9.
Over the last week?
Yesterday. Last week, okay, last week. Let's see new metrics. 8. 7. 7 is here. 6 hours. 6. 5. Oh, this is 4. 4. Okay, I stop here. I heard there was a long party at Schumann's yesterday.
Show me the Z.
So it's great that you're all here back this morning, and I know why, because it's a very important topic. It's advertising, beyond click. It's where the money is. We heard it yesterday. I'm very happy that we have this really top-notch panel of global experts, and we have a wonderful moderator here, David Kirkpatrick. Having you back on stage here to moderate this panel is really great. And I give the word now to you to introduce the fellow panelists on this discussion.
Thank you, Marcel. Really appreciate it, although with that little amount of sleep, the bar is high for me to keep you engaged. Thanks so much. It's great to be here at DLD again. Let me just quickly introduce the panel. We're going to have a wide-ranging conversation about advertising. Just from the far end, Samir Arora, CEO of Glam Media, one of the great media entrepreneurs and advertising network entrepreneurs, is doing a lot of interesting things in that regard. Christoph, what's your last name? I'm sorry. Sure. The mic helps. And Christoph is CMO of Tomorrow Focus, which is a German company based here in Munich, which is operating a number of very important web businesses and web advertising services. So, and developing applications, one of the most important companies in Europe in this space. Linda Abraham is CMO of Comscore. And she's got some data we're going to start with in just a minute, so you'll hear about her. Finally, Mark Reed, who's president of WPP Digital, but I always think of him as sort of a head strategy advisor to Martin Sorrell, which I think is what he is. And no, I know you said you weren't, but I believe you're very involved in a lot of the M&A work over there. So let me just quickly turn it over to Linda for a few sort of data points that are going to kind of wake us up, I hope, and keep us on track. So, please.
Great. Thanks, David. So, we actually, Christoph and I teamed up to look at this issue of clicks specifically in the German market. Comscore, we've done a lot of work on this across the world in a number of markets, but wanted to specifically look at it in Germany because it is a very quantifiable thing, and we are doing we have published a paper that actually is going to be available right after the talk today. So I just want to give you a few highlights to kind of set the table for the discussion here, and we'll kind of go from there. So the key question is really, is the click the right metric for advertising effectiveness? And so by way of background, kind of again stage setting here, the advertising market obviously is getting more and more digital in terms of total spending online and offline. The market is big and getting bigger, and so from a total spending standpoint, you see the spending is approaching, this is in 2009, $150 billion, majority of which is in branding dollars, and of course, a significant portion there in direct response. What you see on the right is the extent to which digital owns a portion of each of those. And you can see by the proportions that obviously Click has, search has done a wonderful job of capturing direct response dollars, but we're really lagging in the area of getting its fair share of, getting our fair share of display dollars as far as the internet goes. And so the question is, if we look at display, what impact does it have, and how is it you measure the effectiveness? And so this is a bit of an eye chart here, but the point is that nobody clicks on ads. And the group of people that do is small and getting smaller. And in Germany specifically, that click rate of 0.11 tells you that over 99.9% of ads are not clicked on at all. And the trended data there, the bar on the top is from a year ago, the bar on the bottom is from last year, and that's decreasing. The rate of clicks is actually decreasing, not just in Germany, but it's really a global phenomenon. And so that leads us to the question of, does advertising work or not? We looked very deeply into the German market on this issue, and we looked at of the people that are clicking on ads, how representative are they of perhaps the impact of that ad? And if you look at the people that are clicking on ads in the German market, and you looked specifically at the heavy clickers, my definition is by four more clicks within the course of a month, a very small percentage of the population is making up a very large percentage of the clicking. So very few people are doing it, and of those that are, they're making up a very large proportion of those clicks. And so the heavy clicking activity is really very limited in terms of the proportion of people. But more importantly, I think it's actually not representative of what the ad is actually doing for you. If you look at what these clickers are doing and you look at everything else that they're doing on the internet, their profile really suggests that they're a very different group of people, and that's important. They tend to over-index and spend a lot more time on sites like gambling, education, things like career services. Collectively, that might imply that they over-index on things like unemployment. That's just a hypothesis.
So they're unemployed gamblers who are poorly educated and sick.
Well, that's the hypothesis. It's not in the paper, but you certainly could construe that pretty reasonably. And so this is clearly not the group of people that we collectively want to base, put our bets behind in terms of whether or not advertising is working. So it really does lead to the question of, did display make a big mistake by putting too much emphasis on the click from the beginning, and all of these sort of financial ecosystems have grown up around the click, and we're now at this point basing the fate of display advertising and the impact of display advertising on a very, very small percentage of the population. And that, in all likelihood, is underestimating the impact that the display is having. So what we did was looked, because we have a panel of 2 million people across the world, we have the ability to essentially set up controlled experiments where you say, you look at people that saw the ad versus people that didn't see the ad, you control for a whole number of factors, and then you can observe what happened to them or what they did over time. And so one of the things that we measure here, this is across a number of studies in the US market, but we measure the extent to which these are dozens of advertising campaigns were able to build brands, which is essentially what television has been doing all along. And the measures that you see there are awareness, things like likelihood to recommend, favorability, and all of these percentage increases are telling you that across the campaigns that we looked at, each and every one of these are having a significant effect, particularly on the likelihood to recommend. So the internet can, in fact, the categories we're looking at here are technology and consumer goods, can have an impact on brand building metrics just the same as TV. Similarly, we can measure the extent to which they increase consumer engagement, so your engagement with a site, your trademark search activity after you're exposed to an ad, and both of those metrics show positive results as well. So we know that they can build brands, we know that you can move consumer engagement, and importantly, in many cases, we're able to tie it to sales, depending on the product. And this is a study of 139 studies in the consumer goods category, and we found that both in terms of online sales and offline sales, you have very measurable effects that can be quantified from advertising. And so these metrics are, I think, just beginning to kind of take shape, and I know Samir is using them. Maybe he can talk about some first-hand experience, but they are very far from just looking at the click alone. Not to say that the click doesn't have a place in understanding advertising. I think the point is that going forward, it's just that going forward we need a broader set of metrics that's more comprehensive. And lastly, this is a pretty interesting study where we compare the impact of hundreds of campaigns across TV and digital, and we found that during the course of the year, that the impact on sales from digital was just certainly comparable with what we found on television. And so that, I think, is a pretty compelling piece of evidence that says that digital can, in fact, build brands, and the effect of advertising can absolutely be captured and quantified. So the way forward, in my opinion, in terms of where hopefully the conversation will go here, is that the click certainly has its place, but it's not the be-all and end-all, and if we're going to really get a fair share of dollars, branding dollars in particular, moving over to the digital channel, it's very important that we have metrics that help marketers and advertisers really understand what those impacts are. So that means looking at things like branding impacts, brand awareness, favorability, looking at online and offline sales, and importantly, looking at the creative impact of digital, which is just also very nascent at this point, but it's going to be continually important.
Thank you, Linda. Now, Christophe, I know you have some data about the overall size of the market, which I think is interesting to think about in light of what Linda just said. So just quickly give us a quick download on some of that data.
Yeah, thank you. So first of all, I have to say we were analyzing our ad impressions in our network, the 10 billion we are delivering per month, and we're finding out that about 70% were based on click metrics, so ask for clicks, and 30% on branding. And that was the reason that we are saying, so how big is the worldwide digital market, and how important is the click as a metrics for the media? And so, based on the eMarketer figures, we find out that the digital advertising market, that means search, display, social media, and so on, will be about $75 billion worldwide this year. So the whole advertising market is about 500 to 600 billion this year, depends on the researchers. And if you have a closer look to the $75 billion digital advertising, you find out that 50 billion of the 75 coming from search, 50 billion of the 75. 25 billion of the 75 coming from display, so the 22 of the 75 is a huge figure, but compared to the 50, it's a much smaller one. And then you have 3 billion of rest, that's affiliate and some other. And if you look to the 22 billion, you find out that 10 billion of the 22 are just booked via branding on the branding approach, and 12 billion are booked just for performance reasons. So in detail, just 10 billion of the 75 billion digital media booked on branding reasons. And so that's the reason why we were going to Linda and saying we have to change that. So just 10 billion of the 75 booked on branding. It's increasing, but it's not on the level we see. And so first step for us is to have a study like this study showing that the click is not the right measurement for branding impact. And second is that we are trying to build up new currencies, like Samir is doing, like Enrique de Castro is doing for Google, like Tim Armstrong is doing for IOL, which is a new currency beyond the click.
Okay, so when the way you're talking about it, you're presuming that none of the advertising on Google is brand advertising in the sense you're defining it, right?
No, I would say if you, so the latest figures are the 29 billion of Google. If you have a look to them, I would say 25 of the 29 billion are search, SEM dollars, and the rest, the 4 billion is YouTube and
right, I'm talking about search. Search advertising, we can pretty much fairly assume, is not at all to do with brand building. But the thing that's interesting to me, and I'm sort of leading up to Mark here and then Samir, but the whole presumption of this is that search is not included in the dialogue, and yet the whole logic of emphasizing the click so much clearly comes from the overwhelming weight that search carries in online marketing. So in a way, the success of search has sort of imposed another mode of thinking on display, which you are effectively arguing with your presentation, Linda, is inappropriate. Is that a fair summary? Is that the way you look at it, Mark?
I mean, yes and no. I mean, I think it's very hard to put the toothpaste back in the tube, right? I mean, we started off selling online display on a CPM basis, and then I think our clients were worried about where it was positioned, how effective it was, did it deliver, and frankly, publishers got lazy and it was easy to sell it on a CPC basis. And once you go to a CPC basis, it's hard to go back and say, well, actually, this other metric, which is somehow seen as less accountable, is better. And by the way, even if you sell stuff on a CPM basis, our clients often evaluate it based on whether people click on it or not. I mean, if you saw two banners and one had a higher click-through rate than the other, your assumption would be that one with a higher click-through rate performed better. It might be for heavy drinking, unemployed gamblers, but it certainly performs better.
Did it say heavy drinking on there?
I don't know, but that was an assumption. So that's one problem. I think the second problem is this term performance, right? Because we've got into this habit of calling something performance media, so people will click on it, which implies that something else does not perform, and we know that that's not the case. So, I mean, to make a slightly competitive comment, we have dynamic logic inside WPP that's done 6,000 brand studies over the last 10 years on this topic, and the firm was founded on the basis that if 99% of people don't click on a banner, the banner has a value if there's 99% of people don't click on it. So clearly that's the case. So I think there's a terminological problem. There's also a slight German issue here. I think this market in particular is much, much more performance or click-driven than other markets. And I think you only need to look at German newspaper advertising to understand that it's a very price-value-led country, and people look at these metrics more than say they would in the US.
You think they look at them too much?
I think the problem is what's the alternative? Because there's not an alternative like television. If you go to all of our clients want to shift budget online. I was at a big packaged goods client talking to their executive committee. We did a presentation on the importance of digital, and then one of the clients stuck his hand and said, "Well, but does all this stuff work? I mean, I know my TV works, and I don't see digital working in the same way." And there's some reasons for that, right? If you spend $5 million on TV, you do a big TV campaign, you integrate it with a new product launch, you integrate it with trade promotion, you integrate what you're doing in the store, your whole organisation is focused on making that work. So clearly it works. Online is still it's not an afterthought, but it does not have the same focus on the organisation. So that makes it harder for people to see other metrics and get beyond this kind of click obsession. So
you think there is a problem that the pricing, the definition of basing it on clicks is leading people to misunderstand how valuable it is?
Yeah, and I think there's other things you need to do to make it even more valuable. I mean, the point is that maybe little banners on a very cluttered page are not that valuable. So it might just not be that valuable. That's the reality. Okay. And we need richer formats.
That's not what people in this room want to hear, but go on.
We need what Tim Marshall was doing earlier, cleaner formats, bigger creative, richer media, more integrated with other media. These are things that all publishers are doing. I know Christoph is doing this, Samir is doing.
So it's just doing it better. I mean, so Samir, your reactions to all of the above. Do we have a serious problem, and what is the potential remedy?
I think you really have to take a step back and look at how did we get here. And I think part of the panel discussion is about not just clicks, but search-specific clicks, and then clicks within banners as well. And maybe I just am very simplistic in the way we've approached this problem. If you're launching a new product, let's take a new Pepsi product to compete with Diet Coke. How are you going to set emotional values anywhere in the world, including Germany? If you think about the emotional feeling towards a BMW versus an Audi or a Mercedes, those are emotional attributes that take a very long time to set with consumers. So, in our case, I think what's unique is 100% of what Glam has done since we founded was on an assumption that branding will take time, engagement, if it's in the early part of the funnel, and will take social activation if it's in the Web 2.0 or latter part of the funnel. So, specifically what that means is we've not focused at all on, so 0% of our business has come from search, almost 0% of our business has come from clicks or CPC or anything related to the first generation of the web. And as I hear this, I look at all the data validating an assumption we made, which is branding will be done where time engagement is highly prevalent and you can influence the consumer and engage the consumer, not just one directionally but also socially. I think this is the big aha. I think that the interesting thing that happened in this downturn is now there's enough data to go back and validate what Mark said and what Linda said, which is, television is a very rich medium. in terms of branding. You're interrupt-driven. You have multiple places where you're interrupted, and Super Bowl and things like that. Advertising is fun. It's a part of the engaging experience. You can't take Vogue and rip out all the ads from it and assume that you're going to have anywhere near the experience you have of the packaged product. So I think you didn't know when this change would start to happen, and you need all this research and data to prove it, but the change has happened. So I think where my view is a little contrarian is in this downturn, for example, we did not suffer the fate of either the slowdown in search or the slowdown in anyone who was in the ad network or CPC or clicks-based business, which is contrary to almost anything you would imagine, where in a downturn specifically, you would think that people would want more effectiveness. And what we found was they actually are now yearning for finding that same level of quality. Specifically, they were used to in print, some parts of newspaper, like the wonderful New York Times, first few pages, and more with television not becoming the medium that's on, but not being watched in most households when you have iPads, computers, laptops being used at the same time. So the specific data bridge, which is I think what this panel is about, is, for us, was very simple. We started by putting only brand ads out. So what Tim has now started as Project Devil, all our ads have been that way from the beginning. Very large. We tried the biggest ad possible. We tried the smallest ad possible. We tried an engaging ad, and then we hit what I call the nugget. The nugget was when ads are contextually relevant, which means that the audience and the behavior of the audience, both are important, and are in social activation well placed, which is a much harder problem to solve, then branding works in a very big way. So specifically, if you take some of the ComScore data, when we started to report to CMOs data against the ads that we were running and some other people were running that said, okay, you want engagement data, here's engagement metrics. You want clicks data, we're not running the ads, but we can give you the same profile on the clickers. Given Glam has a reach of about 90 million uniques in the US, that's almost all, at least in the women's space, a large majority of all the spenders. And what we found was very interesting, exactly the same data as Linda. We found the clickers tended to be groups of people like quiz takers, etc., or gamers, that in the so first phase was find out who they are, not just the clicks. That's the first part. Second part is overlay with the data coming from companies like ComScore and start seeing what our data is saying versus just really accredited data. And the third part was to overlay that with purchasing. First online, because it's easier to do, and more recently we've started to overlay our data in the US with US retail purchase. So I specifically mean targeting someone who's bought Head & Shoulders shampoo in the last 9 months to that level, anonymously in a large group. And what we found is it's unbelievable. It's to be high on a rank of SEO or search or clicks, you need pages that have very low time spent, and therefore by implication, very little time to engage in ads or content. It's not good for the content business, it's not good for the advertising business, not good for consumers in those types of pages. When you actually see those things work well, and the ads are actually relevant, right, for the consumer, then the data clearly points, specifically, if you were looking at beauty products, you would find the people who buy the most, which ComScore has a rank of beauty buyers. You overlay that with our highest engagement data for the last 4 years. Magically turns out people who spend the most also spend the most time on ads for beauty and are the least clickers actually on the list, which is fascinating. So I think today, I would say based on the data at hand and the basic vision, which is there will be two types of branding. There will be branding that's done with engagement in the early part of the funnel, like television. The medium is the internet, or digital. It's a better word, I think, because it's 360. And then second part is there's a whole new set of attributes as the traffic highway, which used to be search, is now moving to, I would say, not really social maps or social, but social feeds to me is the second super highway. that highway creates a new metric for branding. That's already not click space. So you've got two very interesting things converging around consumers.
So really there's two fundamental problems with this click-based mindset, which is, number one, it doesn't reflect the actual value of the ad, but even more profoundly, it undercuts the value of the media on which it is supposedly financing. You know, so Christoph, does that make sense to you? And what's the solution? Let's go towards solutions.
Yeah, first of all, wonderful. So we think 2011 will be an important year for branding in the internet. Samir is working on new currencies. AOL is working on it, Google is working on it. So we think that for the branding approach this is important, and for the publisher also. Because you have to take into account the publisher is taking all the risk if the click is a currency. If a brand is bad or if the creative is bad, the publisher is paying all the risk. So the client is only paying if someone clicks. And that's, I think, is for a branding approach not a fair share between the publisher and the client. So for us, coming from the premium publishing approach, we need sales houses or networks like Glam or AOL or Google will do in display, who think about what is the next currency. And I have to say, what I like is that everyone is working on something like a brand lift. A brand lift means how is the brand effect after seeing the campaign compared to the control group who has not seen the campaign. And the brand lift is very difficult to measure because you have to take controls in TV. For example, was there a TV effect, was there a print effect, and some others. But brand lift, as we are working on it, is something where you need a panel, like a households panel, like Comscore is doing on Nielsen. And then you have to choose a currency TV is having, like the GRP. GRP is well known in the TV world, and you have transferred the GRP into an electronic GRP. And I think that will be the currency which is measuring brand lift. And if that works, I think there will be a more fair share between search and display. So as I said, 50 billion is search and just 22 billion is display. And I think if we work on that and if we have oversized ad formats like Tim Armstrong is doing with his Devil approach, I think we can change this relation between display and search into, in my opinion, more fair relation. And then we would help the premium publishers with their approach in the internet world much more than we have done it in the last years.
So Linda, you know, all of you are pretty much in alignment in the basic attitude here. How far along are the clients and the media buyers in getting this? Because this is a pretty profound, important revelation that they need to have, and have they begun to have it?
Well, I think it's beginning, but I think it's still, fairly nascent. As Martin said, some of this branding work has been done for quite a while, but it's certainly not been done. It's been done a lot in the U.S. It's just, I think, fairly beginning outside the U.S. And I don't think that there has been a great ability to sort of tie all of these metrics together very readily in a way that we can sort of digest and, more importantly, buy against. And that's really, I think, where the industry needs to go.
Okay, so Mark, a huge percentage of the buying is done inside your organization. So do your people get this? Are they going to get it?
Asleep, you're saying.
I'm just asking you.
No, I think they. Look, I think that a new currency would be nice, but I don't think that. Honestly, I don't think that it's going to be it's hard for that to be the basis of how we trade with media owners. I mean, everything in the digital media industry is heading to ad exchanges, data exchanges, all of these things. How do you build brand lift studies that are done a month later into an ad exchange? You can't do it. So I think we need to do the studies to demonstrate the value of the medium. We need to persuade clients that it works. I mean, it's interesting when Samir was talking about the downturn and the upturn. If WPP's strategy is China and the internet, the success, last year in our third quarter was our fastest growing quarter since 2000 was the US and traditional television. So for all we talk about what's going on here, it was the traditional market, and here in Germany things are growing very strongly as well. In traditional markets and traditional media that drove the performance in our business. It was not, It was not the web.
But in a way, what we're hearing here is a little bit of an argument that the way you have to think about the web is the way you think about traditional media, that it's much more overall experiential. I mean, that's what I hear Samir saying, you know, that the ads have to be part of the entertainment. I mean, and in fact, you know, being obsessed with Facebook, as most people here realize, you know, the way that people are expressing their affinity to brands inside Facebook by becoming fans of brands, that becomes a huge percentage of the experience of an ordinary consumer inside the Facebook ecosystem. So they're proclaiming they want some kind of more integrated, and even, I mean, Mark Zuckerberg has pointed out to me, you know, when someone defines their profile in Facebook, almost all the things they're saying, movies, books, you know, those are commercial choices. Those are business decisions. And it's not perceived that way necessarily yet, but so can we get to a new mindset? Is that where we're trying to go?
I think we can. I think social. Look, you know, if Facebook, you know, $2 billion of revenue, is that
I don't know. I mean, that's what they say.
Out of 60 billion, so that's sort of 3% of online ad spend compared to how much time people spend. You know, clearly that number is going to grow. And like you, I think that people's willingness to state their brands, to state their allegiances, and sign up for things is going to be incredibly valuable to advertisers. So that's another element in this mix that goes beyond whether people just click on things. And so I think video, you know, 2011 is supposed to be, you know, the year of video, and I think that you know, moving images and music, I think, is much more engaging, much more brand building, and as an increasing share of TV viewing, Andy Jim Bryce said TV is over yesterday, so the increasing share of TV viewing moving to online video will help further, as will mobile. I mean, the ability to link what people do on the web to what they do in store, to send coupons, to drive sales, all of that will persuade our clients that this is more valuable. And eventually, digital will be the medium. And at that point, this will be a totally academic discussion. People will start with their digital plan, not start with their TV plan.
I want to get to you, Samir. In CES, where I just was, it's pretty amazing. You know, you don't see a TV not being demonstrated that doesn't have the web on it. So I'm really eager to look a little down the road, because the problems are pretty profound, but you can see, you know, convergence in a fundamental way happening, that the distinction between TV and the internet in the mind of the consumer is going to diminish, which means the opportunity is to bridge these media in a fundamental way, so that, you know, if there has been an experience where the ads are part of the overall satisfaction, it would presumably be easier to achieve on what we are now thinking of the internet, to the degree the internet blends more with TV. Does that make sense to you?
Absolutely. I think something has changed. I was here last year, we talked a similar topic, and it was on the road to change. You know, if I look back to 7 years ago when Glam was starting and we were talking to Louis Vuitton or Neiman Marcus or Macy's or even at Walmart, we were doing all the education. We were there talking about this is a medium, it's the web, users are going to go there. I noticed we're not having those conversations anymore. The brands are coming and saying, okay, I know I need a digital strategy. I need a digital 360 strategy if I look out a little bit further. So to me, that's really, really interesting, is something changed in the last, I would say, 7 years. And what changed is all of us have become consumers of this medium. Right? We're no longer reading about it. You know, we're seeing, you know, a 3-year-old has got an iPad in front of it in America because that has displaced the medium of television when you are traveling with them. I don't know if you noticed this winter, if you were in the US, this was an absolute change. So I'm now thinking, in the month of, I guess the last week of December, Netflix in the US was 40% of all internet traffic in streaming. Just think about this now. Now, what does that mean? That means I'm a consumer at home in America. I'm paying for cable to get an internet connection. On that internet connection, I'm going to Netflix and I'm downloading a movie and live streaming a movie on top of the cable company today. Guess what? For the consumer, it's on demand, free, when I want it, and the cable company is still providing the plumbing. They suddenly lost all of their participation in the value chain, correct? Because that was a part of the entire broadcast and or cable model. So my sense is, David, what you're really talking about is you have to look out, given where we are. What happens not when each television has internet access? What happens when every television has Facebook in it? As a replacement for TV Guide, where when I'm sitting there, I'm not only watching shows with my friends outside of Facebook, this is the outside web, this is not the inside social network, right? This is what the great revolution is. Once you have a social map and you have feeds, I now want to push that out to everything I'm doing. I'm already choosing places to go to based on groups on my either Twitter or other feeds or Delicious or finding it through all these systems. This is a fundamental change. This is not a minor change. And brands do know they are going, television is not going away, to your point. As the recovery happens, traditional television will get a bunch of the ad dollars back. As much as just because they have DVDs, people still go to movie theaters. So I think new media people tend to describe the world in an either-or. That, oh, when we invented the Macintosh at Apple, all PCs and Apple IIs would stop being used. We believed it. It was completely untrue. The reality is the old mediums don't go away. The problem is their growth rate or their value creation drivers go away. And businesses become very uninteresting when the industry's growth rate or cash cows get killed. That's the problem, right? That's not a problem in India, China, or Poland, and a few countries where they're not getting killed. So what this revolution is about, mark you, it is a revolution, is a complete reprogramming of consumption by consumers. If we don't accept that fact, we don't understand what's happening in Web 2.0. That's not a minor change. Okay. Now, that's to me, if you start from that premise, then you work around and say, okay, will brands want to be present where consumers are? Of course there will be. It's up to us to figure out how to make it work.
Thanks. So, Christoph, where would you echo, where would you disagree?
Just one addition. So if you compare TV and internet, for example, in Germany, TV is 8 times bigger than the whole display market in the internet. And I would say, why is TV 4 billion euros in Germany, and why is the internet, so the display market, where you have targeting options, where you can, where you have all the analysis you can do in the internet. And I think these two figures are showing that there's a problem in the system, that if 30% is internet usage and 80% is TV usage, so why is this figure so small? And to summarize that, I think we have to use the TV approach. That means oversized exclusive ads on the one hand, and using the same measurement like TV is doing on the other hand. That could be a success, I would say.
Well,
just to say, I want to go back to something you said earlier and sort of react to something that I've heard from all three panelists, where I might have a little bit of a different point of view, or at least a different point to make, which is that you said that when the ad doesn't work, sometimes the publisher, takes the hit, takes the blame, so therefore therein lies the risk. There is virtually no discussion today about the quality of the creative, and I think all three of you have mentioned, we talk about creative, the conversation often goes to ad size or ad format. That is not creative. The fundamental job of creative is to influence thoughts, feelings, ultimately behaviors. And back in my PhD days, I remember there was such a rigor and discipline around advertising and the ability of specifically communicating a message. And certain, commercials would not get to air unless they could pass certain thresholds. And in the internet, in the early days, it was fine. It didn't cost much. There wasn't a lot of risk. But now it's $1 million to take over a homepage ad, and there's virtually no discussion, very little, about. Let's forget about the format for a second, but what is the creative message doing? Is it doing its job in terms of the way forward? I think the ability to measure the creative and have an assessment of that. So if an ad doesn't work, you also have the information around it that says, well, how did it measure up on this creative scale? And I think that there's virtually no discussion around that right now, and I think that's important.
That's a very interesting point. This is at least my 5th DLD, and I have to say, there's a different tone to the discussion, which I think Samir pointed out. There's a certain confidence that
this crowd now has about digital and about, it's sort of a sense of inevitability, I think, which is promising for this industry, even though I think we're sort of still beating our heads against the wall that there's a lot of misunderstanding in the larger world, or the, you know, more primitive world, we might say. But it's very promising. So we've got 10 minutes for some questions or comments from the audience, so let's quickly hear some of you. Nobody has anything to say? Okay, well, thank you very much. No. Okay, over here. Quickly, can we get a mic over there, or you want to just shout it out? Identify yourself.
Hi, David Blumberg of Blumberg Capital in San Francisco. I'm fortunate to be on the board of a company called Double Verify. They found something that's pretty astonishing, and that is that 31% of display ads are not delivered as the buyers intended them. They're geographically mistargeted, they're on the wrong sites, there's all kinds of problems. A little bit of it's fraud, most of it's just error. And I think that partly brands will feel safer as not only Double Verify, but other folks in the industry come together to try and give a better product delivery. WPP is a big user. I'm curious if you have some thoughts. Or Linda.
Yeah, Mark, you got a quick thought on that?
I mean, clearly it's important, and you know, the internet is a bit of a wild, you know, it's a wild west to some degree, and you know, the systems we have to verify where ads are placed, that they're not placed in appropriate content, all of that would help, you know, a bit.
Okay, that's. I think we can move to another one. Unless somebody else. Yeah.
So, as I said before, we are serving about 10 billion ads per month, 10 billion, via an ad exchange called AdShark and premium network with more focused media. And the brand safety is a very important issue. So we have to take control that not one screenshot is sent to the Procter & Gamble media manager seeing the creative on a porn ad, on some other ads, or linking to a porn ad. And I think brand safety, you hit the right topic, is a very important issue if you have so much inventory like we or Samir is having to take a control of it.
Oh, yes. Oh, I've heard you.
Hi.
Identify yourself.
Majid Abraham from ComScore. I think a lot of the discussion here has focused about creating demand for advertising and raising the importance of digital advertising in the mind of the advertiser. I think there is another problem which is potentially bigger, which is the supply side. The fundamental law of economics is that in a competitive market, the equilibrium price equals the marginal cost. So if you think about it in digital, there is no marginal cost because you can always create another ad unit. You could always create clutter on your page. And so supply, in essence, is infinite. And based on that, you're going to end up having a very low price. And let's face it, when you have something that's very low price, people are not going to spend a lot of time optimizing. So I think that part of the challenge for the industry is to figure out how to create scarcity around supply, which doesn't exist right now.
That's it. Yeah. Quickly. Yeah.
I do agree with that 100%. I think the digital medium is being, because of its volume and technology, doing things that we wouldn't even look at television to do, right? So if you think about, after you buy a car, you shouldn't see a television ad for cars necessarily. It's an easy problem to solve if you come from the computer science side. We're going to solve all these problems that have not been solved in other mediums. I think the fundamental tenet of supply, which is most mediums actually have a very large capacity of supply, if not infinite. But they've taken time, let's take, television to develop scarcity through prime time, through Super Bowl, through packages like March Madness, Monday nights, etc. Or magazines having inside covers, The Well, or even having an insert that starts to resemble a cover in its weight. The problem we're looking at of supply is like saying all of internet advertising is the equivalent of middle of the night television right now. That's it, right? So within middle of the night television, you can really optimize on, CPC-based, direct marketing, San Diego firm, 800 numbers. But prime time is the real problem to solve, because the reality, other than a Yahoo or an AOL homepage, the fundamentals of Web 2.0 and social is fragmentation of content, which goes against the creation of scarcity. So I'm a big believer that a lot of effort is going in actually using the data to differentiate audience, or using the data to differentiate supply, or actually doing more formats to create much high impact in it, which creates the scarcity of supply.
And one addition, I think important for the publishers is to segment the inventory, not to sell the premium inventory like home pages below a specific price. We think that 70% of all the ads in the world are selling below $2. And so we were saying on a homepage event, you can't sell as a salesperson, let's say, below $15 to $20, and you have to have rules for the inventory to hold the prices up, because otherwise the 70% below $2 will be 80% below $2 next year, and I think we have to control that.
I would make another comment which sort of aims to set up the next section of the program, which is, one of the many impacts of Facebook, in my opinion, is to reinforce the notion that what's really happening in every ad impression is a direct connection between a marketer and an individual, a real individual, which has been historically grossly undervalued as a transaction. But the more Facebook and other forces underscore the identity and actuality of that connection, the more valuable presumably that will begin to be seen. And this notion of supply is a bullshit measure. If what you're really, the supply is very, very short. If what you're talking about and understanding is a direct one-to-one connection between an individual and a marketer, which can then be two-way. And that is a hugely valuable thing that is never going to be an extremely large supply, especially looked at through the individual lens.
I think, David, this is the heart of the problem. The heart of the problem is we're coming off a paradigm of broadcast, which is a one-way, massive reach problem. And the portal solved it in Web 1.0 through dial-up access or search 1.0 by providing portals like products which are come here and stay here, right? Where we're living now is with hyper-fragmentation, either driven through feeds or Facebook or Twitter or ourselves or blog roles. The Facebook and the big social networks are very visible. The phenomenon that's not as visible is there's intense social activation around micro-communities going on the web today. The problem that creates is how do you aggregate the power of one-to-one influence or customer direct access if you can't aggregate it, because brands are extremely inefficient when you fragment what they do. The whole notion of broadcast, how do you bring that to here? So for me, I think the cat is out of the bag. At this point, consumers are no longer only influencing only part of the funnel. Social activation will be wherever it occurs. Brands have to be present at that point to capture that direct connection to the social consumer. Absolutely.
Christoph, real quick, and then final thoughts.
One very quick comment. So I have to say, you were talking about real-time bidding. Real-time bidding does not mean automatically that the prices are going down. So we were testing real-time bidding with Edgec, our ad exchange in UK, and we were finding out that the price level of real-time bidding, if the demand at the sell side is liquid on a high level, you can reach higher eCPMs than just selling face-to-face to a media agency. So I want to say it's not the problem of a real-time bidding system. The prices is not the problem, because you can say to the system the lowest price is, let's say, $5, and let's put it in the real-time bidding system.
Mark, did you have any final thoughts?
I think just one, which is about ideas. Because I think that what we say to clients, particularly packaged goods clients who come from that kind of what's the one-way interactive media where you tell consumers what your messages are, the brands that will be successful in the future are those that have products that consumers want, like Apple, have propositions they want to get engaged with, people want to form communities around them, I want Facebook, I would say to Facebook, you can ask Dan next, I want them to let consumers choose what ads they want on their page.
Sure.
So I think if our clients could go to Facebook and say, actually,
already you can say like or don't like an ad.
Like or don't like, so why can't you choose what ads run on your home?
You will.
You will. After this.
Okay, thank you all so much.